Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Evelyn of Pink Sheep Design, and today we are doing another yarn review. This is Hooked Cordino Yarn. This is the lovely low tide tee that I created using this new yarn. Now this is a newer yarn for Hooked, so not just new to me. It hasn't been out that long, but it has been on my to use list since they announced this yarn. So this is what it's called. It is Hooked Cordino Yarn. It is a corded style yarn. It is not a filled cord though. So it's kind of a mix between that kind of shoestring type yarn like a Maker Home Deck and ribbon yarn. So it's a really good balance between the two. They have tons of amazing colors. As you can see, this is what it looks like worked up using one of my patterns. Like I said, this is the low tide tee. It doesn't have a lot of stretch, like if you were just to try to stretch the yarn, but the way that it works up, you can see there is quite a lot of give and stretch to the final creation, which I really, really like, especially when I'm trying to create some really funky wearables. So yeah, we're going to jump right in and I'm going to make a couple swatches for you. We'll look at the details and see what we think. So we are jumping right in with this Hooked Cordino yarn. I have two of the colors that I can show you here today. Let's look into these details really quick. So this is the sea blue color. I don't have the one for this, but they have a ton of colors on their website. So if you're looking for a yarn that has lots of color options, this is a really, really great one. This is recycled fibers, which is also really nice. You've got 80% high quality recycled cotton, 20% other recycled fibers. And if you haven't looked into Hooked's story as a brand, I would look into that, especially if you like to purchase yarn that is sustainably sourced. All right, so we have got 59.1 yards, so you get about 60 yards for each one of these. And it does recommend a 6 to 8 millimeter hook. So we are actually going to be using a 7 millimeter hook to do the first swatch for this yarn. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to do two swatches for you guys. And the reason is because the shirt that I showed you on the intro to this one, I actually used an 18 millimeter hook and a 16 millimeter hook. So the 16 millimeter hook was used to make the ribbing of that shirt, which is far cry from the 7 millimeter hook that we're going to be using for the initial swatch. So I think it's really important to show you guys both so you can see the difference. Now, this yarn has a center pull option and an outer pull option. I just realized that that center pull was poking out, so I'm going to use that for this one. Actually, no, I'm not, because I'm going to have to roll that back up when I'm done with the video. Just realized that. See the things that I could be editing out and I don't. That's okay. All right. So let's get started with the swatch. And actually first, instead of doing that first, so interesting thing about Hooked yarn, they don't actually have listed on here the CYC, the Craft Yarn Council weight. So, you know, a lot of yarns, you'll see like a 5 weight or a 6 weight or a 4. You'll see a number on the label. There's no number on this label. So I believe on their website, they list this as a 6 weight yarn. But because it's not on the label, you know, you may get the yarn, you may put it away for a while, you may forget about it. Hopefully they don't discontinue it. But as you guys know, yarn gets discontinued all the time. So if you get stuck, this is a fantastic tool to double check what weight the yarn is before you decide to use it in a project. And this is important too, because sometimes you'll buy yarn and it'll say that it's, you know, a 5 weight or a 6 weight, but then you get it home and you realize that it's just not working for that project. So this is a great way to double and triple check. This is a wraps per inch tool. You can find these in our Etsy shop if you don't have one. And all you do is you take the yarn and you wrap it around this center piece softly. So you're not trying to shove it in place and give yourself more room. You just want it to have like a soft landing right next to the other, that next piece. There we go. And I'm trying not to twist this yarn because it is kind of twisty, a lot like ribbon yarn. All right, so if I don't twist it, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that puts it right there in that super bulky category. So I'm interested to see if the yarn twists, if it makes a difference, because it's going to twist while we work with it. So let's do a little science here. If that twists up on itself at all. It is getting a little bit closer, but there's still not really even much room for that 6th stitch, and that would still put it in the super bulky category. So I think you're safe to say that this yarn is a great yarn for patterns that call for a 6-weight yarn, but you have to keep in mind that because of the structure, because again, this is a lot like ribbon yarn in ways because it is that chainette structure, but it is not filled with anything. So you guys can see this end here. There's not any polyfill coming out. And I'll show you guys the difference. This is Hobie Bungee Mini. It is more like a shoestring tubular style yarn, and you can see the fluff coming out of there. So this is really a good in-between from a tubular filled yarn and a ribbon yarn. It's really kind of a mix of the two of those yarns put together. All right, so let's start ourselves a swatch. This is not the softest yarn on your fingers because it is more of like a shoestring feel. So it's a little rougher on your fingers when you first start working with it. There is not any stretch to it. I guess there's a teeny bit of stretch. So if I were trying to pull it, there's a little bit of stretch, just enough, in my opinion, to make the stitches a little bit easier. It's not going to be as hard on your hands as some other cottons and some ribbon yarns, and definitely not as difficult as t-shirt yarn. But it creates a really cool stitch definition, even if it is twisting up on itself. I don't feel like it is as noticeable in the stitches as regular ribbon yarn. That's just my opinion. I think it's because it is a thicker yarn, so it's not as thin as ribbon yarn. So I think that it still looks really nice. There's, you don't see these really prominent twists in the stitches, even though it is twisting on itself a little bit. So we'll do this first row of single crochet. And I do think it's important to, when you're using yarn like this that is a little bit more difficult on your hands, make sure that you're taking time to stop and stretch. Find yourself some good ergonomic hooks. Ergonomic is not one size fits all, so it may take some looking through different options before you find what works for you. This is what we're looking at for the recommended hook size. So it says a 6 to an 8 millimeter. This is a 7 millimeter hook. And I think it's a beautiful stitch. This would make great bags and things like that, for you to carry around. I don't know if I would try to make a wearable with a 7 millimeter. I don't think you'd have enough flow to it. I feel like it would be a little stiff. Maybe a bralette, but this is a little thick for a bralette. I don't know how that would turn out. I'll have to try it. We'll try it and tell you guys. So we'll do one more row. We're going to do half double crochet for this row. Now the good news is you're not going to have any splitting since this is a chain style yarn. It's not going to be splitting on you as you're trying to work with it, which is nice. And that also, to me, when there's not a concern for splitting, it's easier for me to pull the yarn all the way through the loops on my hook. Sometimes with yarn, I feel like I'll struggle and I'll have to go through each one separately like that. So I'll show you guys that again. I'll feel like I need to do this where I'm having to go through each one separately. But with this kind of yarn, usually it's easier to just pull it all the way through. That time I got a little stuck. And I also think that as you get into the bulkier weight categories, an inline style hook can make things a little bit easier. I've heard that from more than just myself. The hooks that my husband and I make and sell in our Etsy shop are inline style hooks, like this. So you guys can see the ones that we create that are fully 3D printed are an inline style, but we started making these hybrids that use either tapered or inline. So you have the option. But this was the one that I had on hand, so I went ahead and just grabbed this tapered style hook. It does have a nice ergonomic handle, which is helpful. Like I said, looking for the ergonomic style that fits you. It's just going to make your life so much easier if you're crocheting a lot, because nobody wants to have that hand and wrist pain when they're working. So beautiful stitch definition. I love the way that looks. The texture is great. It's fairly easy to work with. Like I said, it's a little bit tougher on your hands, so you just have to keep that in mind when you get started. You don't want to overdo it. And again, it's going to be harder when you're using a smaller hook. So for me, a 7mm to me is a small hook because I work with this larger yarn. So let's do the same thing with the hook that I used for the ribbing on the top that I showed you guys at the beginning of the video. So this is a 16mm hook. Let's see if we can read that on the bottom. There we go. So these are all stamped. I've got a stamp on this one too. Let's see if we can see it. Yep, there's the 7. All right, so we're going to do a similar swatch so you can see the difference that it makes when you use that larger hook versus the 7mm. All right. And to me, this just makes working with any yarn easier, using the larger hooks. That's just my preference. If you guys have been following me for a while, you know that I am definitely a go-to designer if you're looking for patterns that call for using the bulky and the super bulky yarn. So the 5 and 6 weight category. I have around 40 patterns out now, I think, if not more, that all utilize at least a bulky weight yarn. So if you've bought yourself some bulky weight yarn or are looking to and you aren't sure what to use it for, you can always check out my Etsy shop. I am Pink Sheep Design on Etsy. There should be a link in the description where you can check that out if you'd like. And we also I have free tutorials here on YouTube. So I've got a couple of different free patterns that you can access here on the YouTube channel that call for super bulky yarn. So this is what we're looking at for a single crochet. And as you can see, you've definitely got some more motion to it. So it's going to have a little bit more of that drapey feel. It's going to have the more open stitch. So if you are wearing it as like a beach cover up or something like that, you're going to have a lot more airflow through it if that's what you decide to do. So let's do one more row. I'm going to do a row of half double crochet for you so we can really see that difference there. Go. I do have to say, this is probably one of my favorite new yarns that I tried this year. I was really happy with it. I really loved using it. I can't wait to make some more items with it. I believe that they are going to be having a summer sale, that Hoooked is going to be having a summer sale starting in August of this year. This is 2023 that I'm filming this video. So this next coming month, if you want to try any of their yarn, I have reviewed quite a few of their items from their t-shirt yarn. This is Cordino. I have reviewed their Spesso Chunky Cotton, their Ribbon XL. All of them have been fantastic, but this was a really fun one. I don't know why. I just really liked working with it. And you see you've got a little stretch at the end, but this is what we are looking at for that. And this yarn would be great for pretty much any of my patterns that call for a super bulky weight yarn. So we can see the difference. Let's look side by side. There we go. I don't think I did as many stitches on the larger one. But big fan of this yarn. I think it's great. And again, there are so many colors to choose from that you can create some really wonderful things. I do think that it would also make, if you're just wanting to wing it, you could make some really cool bags with this. I know that the fanny pack bum bag style bags are really in right now. This would be a great option for that. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if you don't want to miss any future yarn reviews, tutorials, all of those fun shenanigans. And until next time, happy hooking!